Birthdays used to mean something. At least, they did to me. Growing up, we didn't have much, some duct-taped gifts, off-key singing, and a homemade cake with more love than frosting. But it meant something. You were seen. You were known. Not this year. It was supposed to be a simple get-together. My 38th. Nothing grand, just a backyard cookout, a few chairs on our dead patch lawn, lukewarm beer, and a grill I'd fixed the week before with parts she said we couldn't afford. Family came, a few friends. The usual characters. Her friends, mostly. The kind who drink white wine like it's a personality trait and laugh a little too hard at things that aren't funny. And then she said it. Right after she blew out the candles on my cake. My cake, mind you, which she ordered in her name because the bakery messed up and it wasn't worth fixing. Right after her friend asked some dumb question like, "How do you two keep the spark alive?" She didn't even hesitate. Looked me dead in the face, lifted her champagne glass, and said, "Honestly, if you disappeared tomorrow, I probably wouldn't even notice." Everyone laughed. Like it was some sitcom punchline. Everyone but me. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't even crack a smile. I just picked up my hot dog, extra mustard, just how I liked it, and I said, "I accept the challenge." Quiet. Flat. Just enough edge to make her eyes flick toward me like maybe she realized she'd just lit a fuse she couldn't put out. But she laughed again, played it off, rolled her eyes, said something like, "Oh, relax, you know I'm kidding." But I wasn't. That evening, while they finished off the beer and burned through whatever remained of their filtered laughter, I packed a bag. One backpack, toothbrush, charger, a notebook, a couple grand in cash I'd been saving for God knows what. And I walked out. No dramatic speech. No fight. I didn't even slam the door. You know why? Because I meant it. I was done being the background character in my own damn life. She didn't call. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the next week. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she figured I'd crawl back when my pride wore off. Spoiler alert, I didn't. The first week was the hardest. I stayed in a roadside motel 2 counties over. You know the type, floral bedspreads with stains you don't want to investigate, and a mini fridge that hums louder than the traffic outside. But it was quiet. Peaceful, even. No passive-aggressive reminders to take out the trash. No cold shoulders for things I didn't do wrong. Know her. I started thinking. Not about what I lost. No, I was done romanticizing that. But about how I ended up there. About how a man turns invisible without even realizing it. I remembered our first date. She was all charm and lip gloss, laughing at my terrible jokes and squeezing my hand like I was the center of the damn universe. Somewhere between that night and my 38th birthday, I became a ghost in my own marriage. Not anymore. I worked odd jobs under the table, construction, delivery, even washing dishes in the back of a Mexican restaurant where no one asked questions and no one cared about last names. It was rough, but it was mine. Every blister was earned. Every dollar had my sweat on it. I grew a beard. I let the sun burn my skin raw. I stopped checking her social media. Eventually, I stopped wondering if she missed me, because I sure as hell didn't miss her. 1 year later to the day, my 39th birthday, I stood outside the very house I left behind. Same peeling paint on the porch. Same dent in the mailbox from that one 4th of July when her cousin tried to parallel park and missed by a mile. But everything else? Oh, that was about to change. Because disappearing wasn't the end of the story. It was just the intermission. And the second act? It's where things get interesting. I didn't knock. Didn't need to. I just stood there for a minute, breathing in the thick June air, staring at the door I used to walk through every evening like clockwork. That was the thing: routine, habit, predictability. I'd made my life into something so numbingly consistent that she stopped seeing me altogether. And when someone stops seeing you long enough, they start believing you're gone even when you're standing right in front of them. So when I did finally knock, I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. I wanted to feel it. The tension. The moment right before a storm breaks loose. The silence on the other side of that door? It was deafening. Then I heard it. The click of a lock. She opened the door halfway, phone still in her hand. Hair tossed like she just rolled out of bed, or someone else's. Then her face went pale. I've never seen someone's soul try to run faster than their body could keep up. Daniel. That's my name, by the way. The one she used to say with a hint of affection before it turned into a sigh or a command. "Happy birthday," I said, smiling like I meant it. She stared at me like I'd clawed my way out of the grave. "I thought you disappeared." I finished for her. "Yeah, I remember." I stepped inside before she could say no. She didn't stop me. The place hadn't changed much. Still smelled like lemon cleaner and artificial flowers. The kind of scent you use to cover up rot. You left, she said, like she was the victim. You just left. I turned to her slowly. You said you wouldn't even notice if I disappeared. Figured I'd give you the chance to prove it. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I scanned the room. The couch was different. Bigger. More plush. Expensive, probably. And not a trace of me left in sight. My old recliner was gone. The books I loved, gone. My toolbox, gone. All surgically removed. Like I'd been erased. She finally spoke. You can't just show up after a year and expect. I don't expect anything, I said, flatly. Except maybe an answer. To what? To how long it took before you forgot I ever existed. She flinched. Not physically. Just in the eyes. That's where the truth always tries to hide. She crossed her arms, defaulting into the posture of someone preparing to play victim. You humiliated me. I actually laughed. You made a joke about me disappearing at my own birthday party. In front of your friends. And you're mad I followed through? I didn't mean it. I stepped closer. You never mean it. That's the problem. She looked away. Guilty. But pride is a hell of a drug. Keeps people from confessing even when the evidence is tattooed on their conscience. You want to know the part that really stings? I said, voice steady. You didn't even try to find me. Not a text. Not a call. You just moved on. She opened her mouth. Closed it again. Silence, her last defense. I looked around the house one more time. You kept it all, huh? What? The house. The money. My name, even. But you buried the rest of me so deep you forgot I might dig myself out. She looked like she wanted to cry. Or scream. Or maybe both. But I wasn't there for tears. I was there for clarity. You thought you were funny, I said. That night. That joke. But the thing about jokes? I paused by the door. Sometimes the punchline hits harder than you think. I turned to leave, hand on the knob, when she said it, so quiet I barely heard her. I thought you'd come back. I stopped. Just for a second. Then I gave her the last thing I'd been saving for a whole damn year. I didn't. And I walked out. When I stepped out that door, I didn't look back. You might think that was a cinematic moment. A man reclaiming his dignity in dramatic fashion. But let me tell you what it really felt like. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for a year. You don't realize how heavy a person's absence can be until you walk into the space they used to fill and see that it never missed you back. Not once. Not even a dent in the rug where your boots used to sit. She never wondered if I was dead or alive. Hell, I could have been rotting in a ditch or sipping whiskey on a beach in Cabo. Either way, she made peace with it. That's the part no one tells you about when a man disappears. Sometimes it's not a cry for help. Sometimes it's a statement. I didn't head back to the motel. No, that chapter was closed. I had somewhere else to be. Back when I left, I didn't just vanish like a ghost. I laid the groundwork, quietly, methodically. A buddy of mine from the old shop, Eric, ran a salvage yard out in Red Oak. Not fancy, not clean, but private. We made a deal. He let me live in the trailer out back. I fixed his busted equipment, handled his bookkeeping, even helped him cut a deal on some state-seized tow trucks. In return, I had peace, and silence, and most importantly, time to rebuild. I didn't just disappear from her world. I started building a new one. I got my CDL, picked up weekend shifts hauling loads out of state, then parlayed that into full-time. Not glamorous, but honest, and lucrative. I stashed every penny I didn't need, bought a fixer-upper with a leaky roof and termites for half its worth, did every repair myself, nights, weekends, after runs. Poured myself into it the same way I used to pour myself into that marriage. Difference was, this actually gave something back. By month 8, I was in better shape than I'd been in a decade. I could outrun the man she mocked, outlift the weight of her silence, outwork the lies she told herself about why I was never enough. She took my name, my birthday, my pride, but I took her words and built a kingdom out of them. I still remember the first night in that new house. Bare walls. No furniture. Just me, a mattress on the floor, and a single lamp casting long shadows. It was quiet, but not lonely. Loneliness is when you sleep next to someone who doesn't see you anymore. This was peace. And now here we are. 1 year to the day since she opened her mouth and let that grenade of a sentence roll out. I didn't show up to win her back. I showed up to see if the bomb hit her as hard as it hit me. Turns out, it didn't. Not yet. But oh, the aftershocks, they were coming. Because you don't get to erase a man, write your own version of the story, and expect the original draft to stay buried. Not when he's rebuilt himself brick by brick. Not when he's quietly been pulling strings behind the curtain. Not when he's been watching. You know that house I bought? Guess what zip code it's in? Hers. Guess who recently applied for a business loan she was denied for? Guess who's about to open a catering company that'll take her biggest contract out from under her nose? I didn't come back to fight. I came back to surgically dismantle the version of life she built without me, just enough to remind her what it costs to treat someone like they're disposable. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But me? I prefer it slow-cooked, tender, calculated, and unforgettable. 3 days after I walked through that front door and dropped her conscience on the floor like a deadbolt, I got a message. Not a call, too much pride for that. It was a text. Can we talk? Just that. 4 words. 1 lie. Because now she wanted to talk? When I spent years trying to be heard, when I begged for connection, conversation, clarity, and got nothing but sighs and silence. Now she suddenly found her voice? I let the message sit. Unanswered. Unread. Let it fester. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt in that house. The echo of words that never came. The cold breath of being ignored when you were screaming inside. A week later, I heard from Eric. He called while I was tuning the brakes on one of the yard trucks. Bro, he said, did you know your ex is trying to pitch her catering company for the Hayes wedding out at the Belridge estate? I smiled. Yeah, I said. I heard. What you might not have heard, he continued, is that she just lost it to a brand new company run by some guy named Dan Clifton. Clifton. My mother's maiden name. No one outside my bloodline would recognize it, which is exactly why I used it to register the LLC 2 months earlier. I didn't want her to know where the storm was coming from, just that it had her address. Dan Clifton Catering. Home-cooked, elegant, modestly priced, and strategically connected. You'd be surprised what kind of business you can snatch up if you undercut the right people and shake the right hands. Especially when you've been watching her client list build for years. Especially when you know exactly how late she shows up, how she treats her staff, how she uses leftover food to cover shorted orders, how she double books events and smooths it over with a smile and excuses. I knew the cracks, and I walked my offer straight into them. 2 days later, another text. Did you do this? No name, no context, just panic dripping through the screen. I didn't respond, because when someone who said they wouldn't notice you disappears and suddenly they can feel your shadow, that's when you know you've finally arrived. I wasn't trying to destroy her. Let's be clear. This wasn't about some cartoonish revenge fantasy. This was about giving her what she asked for. A world where I disappeared. She just didn't expect the version of me that came back would be stronger, sharper, and 3 steps ahead. You see, when you ghost a good man, you don't bury him. You bury the last part of yourself that ever knew how to be decent. And the longer he stays gone, the more his absence turns into your unraveling. She showed up at my new business 3 days later. I was in the kitchen, checking inventory. The receptionist called back. There's a woman out here asking for Dan. Won't leave a last name. I peeked through the slatted window. There she was. My ex-wife. Her hair perfectly curled. Makeup flawless. Face pale. Like the realization finally hit her. She didn't just lose her husband. She lost the man who used to be her biggest ally. And now? He was the quiet stranger she never saw coming. I walked out, wiped my hands on a towel. She opened her mouth to speak, but I just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, we're booked," and walked away. I didn't look back when I walked out of the lobby. Didn't have to. I could feel it, the heat of her confusion, the sting of her pride bleeding out quietly in front of my receptionist, who couldn't have cared less. She built her whole image on being composed, untouchable, and there she was, red-faced, deflated, powerless, like a queen without a court. 2 hours later, another text. "Please talk to me. Just for a minute. I don't even recognize you anymore." That was the first honest thing she'd said in years. Of course, she didn't recognize me. Because the man she used to know, the one who did the grocery runs, paid the bills, fixed the leaky sink, and still kissed her goodnight when she turned away, he died on his last birthday. What came back was the residue of being underestimated. And I wore that like armor. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent my assistant a note to forward a thank you basket to the Belridge estate. Signed it from Clifton and Company. She'd know exactly what that meant. It wasn't a jab. It was a whisper in the dark. A reminder. He's here. He's watching. He's winning. That night, I sat in my kitchen, alone. Soft jazz playing in the background. No TV. No chaos. Just quiet. And as I sipped a glass of bourbon, I realized something that made me smile. I didn't miss her. Not even a little. You'd think, after 10 years with someone, after building a life, even a broken one, you'd feel something. Regret. Longing. Nostalgia. But all I felt was relief. Because once I stopped trying to fix someone who wanted to be broken, I started fixing myself. And man, that version of me? He's not someone you cross. She started showing up places after that. First, my old mechanic's garage. Then the grocery store I used to go to before I moved 3 towns over. And finally, through mutual friends. She kept it casual at first, just wondering if anyone's seen him. Then desperate. Have you heard from Dan? I just want to talk. Please. But people knew better. I hadn't just vanished, I'd leveled up. And no one was going to drag me back into her circus. Then, she did it. She emailed me. Formal. Professional. Like we were strangers conducting a job interview. Daniel, I'm reaching out regarding the Belridge account. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the contract. I'd like to meet in person to clarify a few things. Please let me know your availability. Regards, Kendra W. Kendra. Her middle name. She was using aliases now. Trying to fish me out like I was some client who missed a payment. Cute. But the thing about pretending? Eventually, the mask slips. And when it does, you better hope the man on the other side still has mercy left. I replied with one line. Kendra. Your confusion is noted. Unfortunately, I no longer offer clarity to those who never gave it. Send. By now, her name was starting to slip off lips that used to speak it with praise. Not because I told lies. Because I told nothing at all. Silence is a scalpel. And when it's wielded right, it cuts deeper than any rumor. Her next big gig was the Monroe Calder wedding. Big money. VIP guests. The kind of exposure small businesses beg for. She had the contract signed. The invoice cleared. And then, the venue pulled out. Not publicly. Not loudly. Just a simple, quiet, we've decided to go in another direction. She thought it was bad luck. But what she didn't know was that 2 months earlier, I'd built a relationship with the Monroe estate manager after donating meals to their foundation's charity event under the Clifton name. See, I didn't sabotage her. I offered a better option. Quieter. Cheaper. More reliable. And that's all it took. Because you don't fight a reputation. You replace it. She started losing bookings. One by one. Not fast. Not enough to scream disaster. But just enough to feel like a series of unfortunate coincidences. First, it was a vendor dropping out. Then a couple canceling last minute. Then her longtime florist switching to a more consistent partner. Every time she tried to pivot, I was already there. I didn't burn her world. I bricked the exits. A mutual friend called me not long after. You hear about Vanessa? That's her best friend. The one who laughed the loudest when my wife joked about me disappearing. She had to loan your ex $5,000 to keep her staff paid last month. Apparently, business is weirdly slow this season. Weirdly slow. I chuckled. Funny how karma shows up dressed like a market dip. The best part? I didn't rub it in. I didn't gloat. I didn't post cryptic quotes or take victory laps online like some bitter teenager. Because this wasn't revenge. This was a memo. One that read, some people don't realize they were standing on your back until they fall and wonder where the ground went. Then she made her first mistake. She showed up at my house. New car. Nervous smile. Makeup like she was headed to prom with the devil. I watched from the porch, arms crossed, glass of water in my hand. She walked up the steps like she was stepping onto a landmine. Because she was. Can we talk? She asked. I looked her in the eye and said nothing. You've made your point, she continued. You're punishing me. I get it. Still quiet. But you're better than this. That one made me laugh. Actually laugh. Better than this? I said finally. You looked me in the eye on my birthday and told a room full of people I could vanish, and you wouldn't even notice. I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I vanished. She looked down, mouth tight. And now that your life's a little less curated, now I'm cruel? Her voice cracked. I made a mistake. No, I said, stepping closer. You made a choice. The mistake was thinking I'd stay. She turned to go. But before she stepped off my porch, I called out to her one last time. You know what the difference is between me and the men you thought you wanted? She looked back, eyes glossy. They leave you behind to spite you. I smiled. I left you behind to save me. 2 days after the porch scene, she called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Daniel, I don't even know who you are anymore. You're not this cruel. This isn't the man I married. Exactly. That man? He's buried under a backyard full of your sarcasm, your apathy, your weaponized indifference. You mourn him now, huh? Too bad you didn't love him when he was alive. She started asking around. Subtle at first, reaching out to former colleagues, vendors, even Eric. Tried to play it cool. Hey, just curious if Dan's doing okay. Haven't heard from him. Eric laughed and told her straight. He's thriving. You should try it sometime. She didn't like that. Her silence used to be power, a weapon. But now, my silence was stronger. Because nothing unsettles someone like being ignored by the person they thought would always come running. I got a message from her sister, of all people. Hey, I don't want to get involved, but she's not doing well. That's rich. The same sister who once told me, you're lucky she even picked you, she could have had anyone. Now she's worried. Nah, she's not worried about me. She's worried the center of attention is slipping from her sister's hands like sand, and there's no one left to sweep it up. 3 weeks passed. Business was booming. Clifton and Company had picked up 2 more major events, both ones she bid for. Each loss cut her deeper. Not because she needed the money, though she was starting to, but because her identity was cracking. She'd wrapped her self-worth in attention and admiration, built a personality on perception. And now, people were whispering about the slip-ups, the lost clients, the sudden desperation, but mostly about me. I didn't even need to say anything. Word travels in small towns faster than wildfire. And when people heard I was back, quietly successful, running my own company and keeping to myself, they wanted a piece of that. Turns out, people root for underdogs, especially the ones who vanish, then come back swinging. Then came the last straw. She called my lawyer. My lawyer had the audacity to say she believed I was intentionally undermining her business. He laughed in her face. Ma'am, he said, he hasn't mentioned you once in a legal or professional capacity. He's just better at what he does now. She tried to push it. Threatened legal action, defamation, interference. But there's a funny thing about ghosts. You can't sue a shadow. And every email she sent, every claim she tried to build, collapsed under one truth. She wanted a man to disappear. And she got exactly what she asked for. One night, I got home late, exhausted, covered in sawdust from a side project on the new event space we were building. And sitting on my porch? A box. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a framed photo of us. From our 3rd anniversary. Dinner by the bay. She was wearing that blue dress. The one I said made her look like a lighthouse on a stormy sea. Taped to the back was a note. I miss the man you were, but I think you miss him too. Please stop this. No name. Didn't need one. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I dropped it in the trash. Because here's the truth she still hadn't learned. You don't get to mourn a man after you laughed him into oblivion. People think the most painful part of betrayal is the moment it happens. They're wrong. The real pain comes later, when you realize the person you broke didn't shatter. They evolved. And now? She was finally seeing it. But not because I told her. Because someone else did. It started with a fundraiser. Local Veterans Association. A cause I've supported for years, long before I disappeared. This time, though, I wasn't in the crowd writing quiet checks. I was at the center table with Ava. Not her real name, but that's what we'll call her here. She wasn't a rebound. She wasn't a replacement. She was unaware of everything I used to be. She knew the man I'd become. The builder. The ghost-turned founder. The quiet force who didn't chase status, he attracted it. We met when her nonprofit hired Clifton and Company to cater an event 6 months earlier. I didn't flirt. I didn't try. She asked me for coffee. She liked the way I spoke. Or maybe the way I didn't. She said I made silence feel like safety, not awkwardness. We went slow. I didn't even tell her about my marriage for the first 2 months. Then one night over wine and a campfire in my backyard, she asked, "Who hurt you?" I didn't answer. She just nodded, as if that silence was more honest than any sob story ever could be. She didn't push. And that's how I knew. She wasn't trying to fix me. She was just present. Back to the fundraiser. I knew she'd be there, my ex, that is. Her name was still clinging to the social scene, even if the shine was fading. She'd never miss an event that let her wear a cocktail dress and network in stilettos. When she saw me across the room, standing beside Ava, something in her face buckled. Ava had her hand looped through my arm. Comfortable. Warm. Not performative. The kind of closeness that didn't beg for attention, it earned it. My ex didn't come over. Didn't wave. Didn't even pretend. She just stared. Then looked down at her drink like maybe the answer was hiding in the glass. Later that night, Ava leaned in and said, "That woman, she kept looking at you like you were a ghost. Should I be worried?" I shook my head. No. Just someone who didn't believe I'd rise again. Ava smiled. "Well, here you are." And she kissed me like she meant it. The next morning, voicemail from my ex. Again. "So, you have a girlfriend now." That was fast. Fast? I laughed out loud. What she saw was the harvest. What she didn't see was the year I spent tilling the dirt she buried me in. "I hope she knows what kind of man you used to be." Ah, there it was. The desperation. The projection. Because she couldn't stand that someone saw in me what she chose to ignore. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about her missing me. This was about her no longer being the only one who could have had me. Later that week, Ava and I grabbed coffee downtown. My ex drove past. I saw her eyes flick from Ava, to me, to the empty seat next to her. And I smiled. Not out of spite, but out of peace. Because I didn't need her pain to feel validated. Just her silence. And now? She was the one who vanished. She reached out again. This time with a tone shift. Gone was the passive-aggressive edge, the thinly veiled digs. This wasn't a knife behind the back. This was an open hand. Fake sincerity and all. "Hey, I think we need to talk. Just to clear the air, you know? For closure." Closure. That word. That neat little term people like her toss around like it's a handkerchief, when really, it's just guilt wearing perfume. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat down and wrote a letter I'd never sent. Here's what it said. "Closure? You want closure now? You had that when you laughed at me on my birthday. You had that when you deleted me from the house like a smudge on a mirror. You had closure when you went to bed without asking where I was, how I was, or why I hadn't come home. What you really want isn't closure. You want absolution. You want me to say, it's okay. But it's not. It never was. The truth is, I already got my closure. The second I stopped caring whether you noticed my absence. The second I looked in the mirror and saw a man I respected again. I burned it in the fire pit out back. Watched the edges curl and blacken, bit by bit, until nothing remained. And you know what? That silence? That unspoken goodbye? It said more than any conversation ever could. A few days later, I heard from Vanessa again, her best friend. She reached out on social media of all places. "Hey, sorry to intrude, but she's not doing well. Maybe you could." I don't know. Just talk to her. Talk? No. No more saving people who threw you overboard and acted surprised when you stopped swimming toward them. I didn't reply to Vanessa either. Because this wasn't some romantic tragedy. This was a survival story. And the first rule of survival? Don't return to the fire just because it looks lonely now that it's cold. Meanwhile, Ava? She didn't pry. She never asked me for details. She saw the scar and respected the silence. She didn't need to know the whole story. She just cared about the ending. And how I was writing a new one with her. One afternoon, Ava was scrolling through her phone and laughed. "Did you see this? Your ex started a new page. Empowered women in business." I looked over. There she was. Framed in good lighting. Posing like she'd never been cracked. Hashtag rebirth. But behind the makeup, I saw it. The hollow. The haunted gleam of someone trying to perform confidence while choking on regret. She wasn't reborn. She was rewriting. Desperately. But you can't polish an ending you never earned. And no hashtag changes the fact that your punchline walked away and built an empire out of your silence. She wanted closure. So here it is. I forgave myself. For staying too long. For loving too deep. For believing too much. And her? I left her with the one thing she never expected. Nothing. It started with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Heard you're speaking at the chamber luncheon Thursday. I'll be there. Thought we could catch up." No name. Just implication. Like we were old friends instead of distant echoes. Like time didn't happen. Like betrayal didn't happen. I didn't reply. Because I don't make appointments with the past. But I knew she'd show. She always did love being seen, especially when she felt unseen. The luncheon was nothing fancy. Folded chairs. White tablecloths. Polished silver trays and half-warm roast chicken. But I wasn't there for the food. I was the keynote speaker. Dan Clifton, founder of Clifton and Company. Former nobody. Now somebody. The kind of rise that makes people whisper and wonder. As I stepped onto the stage, I scanned the room. She was there. Back row. Dark sunglasses indoors, hair perfect, posture strained. She wasn't trying to be noticed. She was hoping to be remembered. I didn't mention her. Not once. I spoke about integrity, about rebirth without noise, about what it means to fail in private and rise in silence. When I finished, I got a standing ovation. She didn't clap. She just sat still, hollowed out behind designer lenses. Funny, isn't it? How the ones who laughed loudest end up the quietest when they're no longer part of the punchline. Afterward, people came up to shake my hand. Offer deals. Book events. I kept my answers short, my gaze moving. And then, there she was, standing off to the side like a guest who wasn't sure if they were invited or just tolerated. She walked up slowly, the same way she used to walk into rooms where she thought I was still waiting. Hi, she said, voice low. That was powerful. I nodded. Thanks. She hesitated, waited for more. It didn't come. I'm glad you're doing well, she added. I could have said anything. I could have lashed out. Could have listed all the ways her absence was a gift. Could have handed her the emotional invoice for the man she tried to erase. Instead, I smiled, just enough to be civil, and said, I know. Then I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. Because what do you say to a ghost who's finally stopped haunting you? What do you say to the man who built a better life without you? Because of you. But never for you again? That was the last time I ever saw her. No grand goodbye. No letters. No second act. Just one final image burned in memory. Her standing still in a room full of motion, while I moved forward. And that's the twist, isn't it? She thought I'd spend the rest of my life proving I was worth loving. She didn't realize. I already did. Just not for her. Not anymore. She never reached out again. No texts. No emails. No fake emergencies. Just silence. And not the kind that feels peaceful. The kind that creaks. I imagine she sat there sometimes, late at night, in that cold bed we once shared, staring at her phone, wondering how a man like me could just turn it all off. But I didn't turn it off. She flipped the switch. I just never flipped it back. And here's what most people don't get. When a man stops chasing, it isn't because he gave up. It's because he saw the cliff and chose to climb a different mountain. My new life was quiet, not boring, intentional. The morning started with black coffee and sunrise light cutting through the wood blinds. No yelling. No sarcastic remarks. No one sighing like my presence was a burden. Just peace. I didn't fill the void with noise. I filled it with discipline. Ran 3 miles before sunrise. Worked 12-hour days. Built the company from a name into a brand. People noticed. Not because I screamed success, but because I wore it like still water, calm on the surface, strong underneath. The kind of strength that doesn't bark. It just stands. Ava saw it. She never tried to fix me. She just fit. The way a glove fits a calloused hand. She respected the scars, but never asked for the backstory. She didn't love who I used to be. She loved who I became in spite of it. And that's a different kind of healing. Not the Band-Aid kind. The bone-deep kind. 6 months later, we signed the lease on our second kitchen location. Clifton and Company was now a regional staple. Booked out 6 months in advance. Waitlists for weddings. People flew us in. I didn't advertise much. Didn't need to. Word travels fast when you're the quiet storm in a room full of broken umbrellas. One day, I was reviewing proposals when a familiar name popped up in a vendor application. Her. My ex trying to license a sauce brand through one of our wholesale distributors. I stared at the screen, and for a second, I almost felt something. Not anger. Not pity. Just distance. Like looking at an old photo and not recognizing the face anymore. My assistant looked at me. Want me to decline it? I shook my head. No, I said. Let it go through. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? Yeah, I said. Some ghosts are better left wandering. But that wasn't mercy. That was clarity. Because I didn't need to block her. I already replaced her. Not just with Ava, but with a version of myself she never believed in. A man who didn't have to yell, threaten, or destroy to win. Just walk away. And keep walking. I'd become the thing she never understood. A man who didn't just move on. He moved up. And never sent a postcard. I used to wait. Wait for her mood to change. Wait for her to come around. Wait for the affection that only came in ration doses, like she was handing out heat in winter. Now, I don't wait for anything. Not approval. Not apologies. Not closure. I build. And the man I become? He doesn't need the past's permission to own the future. We were invited to a gala that fall, Ava and I. Downtown. Black tie. One of those events where everyone pretends to be richer than they are. She didn't want to go. I don't need to play dress up to feel successful, she said, brushing her curls into a ponytail. I laughed. You don't. But I need you on my arm when they realize the guy that rode off now owns half the sponsors. So we went. She wore a navy silk dress with no intention of outshining anyone. She still did. Not because of sparkle. Because of presence. She had what my ex never could fake, substance. And wouldn't you know it? Guess who was there? Yep. Her. She stood near the back, hanging off the arm of some real estate agent who wore too much cologne and smiled like his teeth hurt. She saw me. Saw us. And for the first time, I didn't flinch. Didn't feel the ache. Didn't feel the pull. Didn't feel anything. Just peace. And then Ava leaned in and whispered, she's staring like she wants to ask the universe for a do-over. I smiled. Too late. The universe already handed it to someone else. Let me tell you something. Control is a leash. It snaps when you pull too hard. Power? Power is when you don't have to pull at all. Power is when you walk into a room and people adjust themselves. It's the difference between shouting for respect and commanding it by existence alone. My ex never learned that. She thought controlling me was the same as being worthy of me. That's the fatal flaw with people like her. They don't want to grow. They want you to shrink. 1 month after the gala, she reached out again. Not directly. Through a third party. A mutual acquaintance. Some washed-up caterer who used to badmouth me before I got lucky. Hey man, he said on the call, I ran into Kay. She was asking about you. Said she regrets how things ended. Thinks you two should catch up sometime. Said she's changed. I didn't even blink. She hasn't, I said. Tell her I'm busy. For the rest of my life. Because here's the truth. When someone plays Russian roulette with your loyalty, they don't get to ask you for coffee after they run out of bullets. I've stopped trying to teach her anything. That's not my job anymore. She'll either learn from the silence or drown in it. Either way, I'm not the lifeguard. It was a Wednesday. Rain on the windshield, just enough to keep the wipers busy. I was on my way to a supplier meeting when my phone buzzed. A number I hadn't seen in 2 years. Her mother. Didn't even have to check. I remembered the area code like a scar. I let it go to voicemail. 10 seconds later, ding. Daniel, I know I'm the last person you expected to hear from, but I think we need to talk. Not for her. For you. For me? No. This woman never did anything for me. She was the voice behind my ex's coldness. The one who taught her how to weaponize affection. How to calculate emotional silence. How to make you beg and then resent you for doing it. But still, something pulled me. Not curiosity. Not hope. Closure. But on my terms. I met her at a garden cafe 2 towns over. Neutral ground. She was already seated when I arrived, sunglasses perched on her head, hands folded like she was giving a eulogy. She stood to greet me like we were old friends. Daniel, she said, as if the name still tasted familiar. I didn't smile. Didn't shake her hand. Just sat. She got to the point faster than I expected. I'm not here to defend her, she said. I think you were the best thing that ever happened to her. And I think she didn't know what to do with that. I stared at her. She kept talking. She told me everything. How you left. How you build a business. That you're with someone now. She paused. Studied my face. She's lost. And not because you're gone, but because you never came back. That's what she never expected. I sipped my coffee, calm. Then she didn't know me at all. No, her mother said. She knew the version you were, not the one you became after she broke him. That's when it hit me. She wasn't here to reconnect. She wasn't here to repair. She was mourning, not for her daughter, for the part of herself that saw what she'd shaped and regretted it. She said something to me the other day, the woman went on. Said you used to make her feel safe. And now she doesn't even feel seen. I nodded slowly. Yeah, well, that's what disappearing does. Makes people look. Then she leaned in. And this is what she said. She doesn't want you back. She wants who she was when she had you. And that version of her doesn't exist anymore. There it was. The final puzzle piece. She didn't miss me. She missed proximity to the man who validated her. And without me, she was just another woman with expensive shoes and no compass. When the check came, I paid it. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. I stood, looked her in the eye, and said, "Tell her thank you." She blinked. For what? For letting me go. Without that, I'd still be the man who thought her silence was his fault. And I left. In the rearview mirror, I saw her sit back in her chair. Still, like someone watching a chapter close, with no idea what the next one's called. But I did. It was called freedom. You ever wake up next to someone and feel still? Not excited, not nervous, not waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just still. That's what mornings with Ava were like. No games, no tension, just the smell of black coffee and her humming while watering the herbs on the windowsill. I didn't have to measure my words, didn't have to shrink myself to keep peace, didn't walk on eggshells to avoid a fight that was always waiting for a reason. She gave me the rarest gift I'd never known I needed. Room. Room to grow. Room to rest. Room to exist. We had a small weekend tradition. Saturdays, no screens, no schedules. Just her and I, a road trip an hour in any direction, and whatever we found on the other end. Once it was a flea market where I bought an antique compass. She asked me why. Because I spent years lost, I told her, and I never want to forget what direction feels like. She didn't say anything. She just slid her hand into mine. Not everything needs words. That same weekend, I got an email. A wedding request. Big one. High profile. Destination event. But what caught my eye wasn't the name of the client. It was the name of the officiant. Her. My ex. Apparently, she'd rebranded again. Relationship speaker. Now she officiated marriages like she hadn't buried one herself. I showed Ava the email. She laughed. The woman who mocked the idea of loyalty now leads people into vows? Well, bold. I nodded, closed the laptop, and said, she doesn't exist in this house. Not anymore. And that was the truth. The real revenge wasn't in winning. It was in no longer needing to be seen winning. It was in smiling for no reason, laughing without guilt, waking up next to someone who didn't mistake your silence for weakness, but recognized it as peace. One night, Ava looked at me across a small table at a mountain cabin we rented for the weekend. She took a sip of wine, set it down, and said, you carry your past like armor, but you don't use it to hurt. You just wear it so you don't forget. I nodded. I think that's why I love you, she added. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a man. Tea was a Wednesday morning, clear skies, quiet town. I was on the back deck, sipping coffee, Ava inside, flipping through color palettes for the new storefront. And then the door creaked open behind me. You got a second? She asked. I turned. Always. She sat down beside me, held out a folder. Business expansion plans. A third location. You sure about this? She asked. It's big. I smiled. I didn't build this life to think small. That was the truth. For years, I built everything just to survive. Now, I was building to thrive. People around town started calling me the comeback guy. Funny, isn't it? They never asked why I left. Only how I came back so clean. They didn't know the half of it. Didn't know about the voicemail. The birthday party. The woman who used my name like it came with a warranty she could void at will. They didn't know about the fire I walked through. And I didn't tell them. Because I'd become the kind of man who doesn't need applause to feel complete. One afternoon, a young guy I'd hired pulled me aside. Can I ask you something? He said. Shoot. You're always so calm. Like, nothing rattles you. How do you do that? I thought about it. And I said, once you've been completely erased by someone you trusted and survived it, there's nothing left to fear. That calm you see? It's not peace. It's precision. He nodded like he'd just heard something he'd carry for life. And maybe he had. That night, I went into my office, just me in the dark. I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in a year. Inside, a photo. The one she mailed me. The one I'd almost burned again. But I didn't burn it. This time, I tossed it into the shredder. Not out of anger. Out of finality. Because some symbols need to be destroyed quietly. Without ceremony. Without hate. Just gone. Then I took out a different photo. Ava and I, standing outside our second location, arms around each other, sun in our eyes. And right under it, I wrote a note. Legacy isn't built in the sunlight. It's born in the dark. And it grows with the ones who choose you. Not the ones who tested you. I framed that one. Hung it right over the office door. The last thing I see when I leave. The first thing I see when I come home.